Closer. Welcome to our session today about sort of virtual connections. Now, the reason we wanted to kind of do this was because I think it's really interesting how program and exhibition and distribution and festivals have suddenly sort of become friends, better friends over lockdown. Just to introduce myself, my name's Claire Vaughan. My pronouns are sort of she, her. And I'm sitting in my living room at the moment. I've got purple hair and a black top, and I'm a happy fat lady sitting in my living room. Just to explain a little bit about Chapter really briefly. So we've been going for about 50 years. We're sort of situated just outside of Cardiff city centre, and we've got 2 screens. We've also got performance spaces and a gallery as well, and we've got sort of quite a large cafe bar as well that got refurbished a few years ago, which obviously has been very useful. This sort of big, large space that we can do social distancing in. So that's Chapter in a nutshell. Anna, can you please introduce yourself?
Thank you, Claire. Hello, everyone. My name is Anna Germanidi. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a white woman with short, curly brown hair. I'm wearing a mustard color shirt and have headphones on, and I'm sitting in my apartment. And in the background, we can be seen a sketch of a whale. So I handle the theatrical sales and exhibition relations for Modern Films. We're a London-based, female-led production, distribution, and event cinema company. Our focus is creating connections between content, context, and curation, with a particular emphasis on pressing social issues of our time.
Brilliant, thanks. And Nia, could you please introduce yourself and Abertoir Festival a little bit to us?
I certainly can. Diolch yn fawr, Claire, bore da. I'm Nia. My pronouns are she, her. Sorry, I've neglected to put them in my name on the screen. I'm here in my living room / office / everything at the moment in Aberystwyth. You can kind of see the hint of a DVD shelf behind me and some trinkets on that shelving. I have long dark hair. I'm wearing a black top as always, and I've got dark rimmed glasses on as well. I'm festival co-director for Abertoir. Abertoir is Wales's International Horror Festival. We've been going for 15 years now, established in 2006 by Gaz Bailey. We're ordinarily a festival that takes place every November in Aberystwyth Arts Centre, and we're very fortunate to have the support of Film Cymru Wales, and it's been an interesting year. And it almost feels like trying to explain the usual mode of Abertoir feels so disrupted now, but yeah, we'll get into that. So thank you. Diolch, I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, diolch, Nia. Okay, well, just to sort of set the scene a little bit, because I know that there's people sort of watching this from all kinds of things. I mean, just to say briefly, I love This Way Up. I'm a huge fan of This Way Up, and it breaks my heart that we can't all just sort of go out and have a gossip after this session in person and give each other hugs. But it's really lovely that we're doing this sort of digitally at the moment. I'm really pleased that we can share things, but I know that there's lots of different types of people that come to This Way Up for different reasons. So just to kind of set the scene a little bit about how it's been for Chapter during this time in context of the session we're doing. So sort of like a bad disaster film, like most boring disaster film I can ever imagine. I remember being sat in the UKCA conference, and all of our phones started buzzing because Bond had moved, and it feels like a million miles away, and it was just on the cusp of how, you know, all of this sort of, the situation, and we were like, and my first reaction was like, kind of, oh well, wow, that's a decision. Well, there's all these other films now I can play. Great, sort of rubbing my hands. Brilliant. Okay, well, I can get that one in. I was going to have to drop that so that one can move up. So I started thinking, oh, this is quite a useful time now for independent cinema with Bond gone. We can show people something else, and it was a really exciting moment for me in a way. So it's so then, like, obviously, didn't see it as being that much of a big deal at the start, which seemed ridiculous. Just thought, oh, it's moving, it'll be okay, right? And then it was like a disaster film, seeing like the washing my hands thing, and people mentioning things throughout the conference, and people getting a little bit working out where the next flight was going to get to, and so it's it kind of sort of happened sort of like slowly but very quickly, I think. And then we also, for Chapter, we had the Cardiff Animation Festival that was due to start on the 1st of April. So again, for seeing it from that point of view of festivals as well. I mean, we worked really hard with Lauren from Cardiff Animation Festival, trying to work out what we were going to do. So the first thing was like, well, okay, so we can't do it as big as we were going to do it, so we can do it in a slightly different way. We could maybe, you know, have less events, have smaller capacity, have less screenings. And obviously, you know, as it went on, we were like, kind of, actually, is there any point doing a festival if we can't do it the way we usually do it? And that was the decision we kind of came to. And then the decision got made for us when we had to close down. So it was like, there we go, we've got no films, we've got no venue, here we are. And I mean, like, personally for me, I mean, my first thought when sort of the whole of the UK lockdown was, you know, I started worrying about my audience, and I started thinking, oh, you know, everybody's really scared right now. This is, you know, use the word unprecedented over and over again, but yeah, like, nothing like this has happened to us in our lifetime. So what are we gonna do? And I kind of like, I found a Welsh film that was screening on BBC. So I thought, well, everybody's got BBC. Let's watch this together. And I sort of had a chat with people, and so I started a little online film project called Reframe Film, where I was kind of like just doing watch long events with my audience, and sort of doing Zoom chats and things. And obviously that's it's a very, very different type of audience engagement. But I mean, it was really important to me that we keep connected with our customers. But I didn't know how the rest of the industry was going to react, to be quite honest. It just didn't seem, I mean, everybody was in such a tailspin. And it was really nice then to bring in Anna, to suddenly get a lovely email from Modern Films saying, okay, you know, we know you had to cancel this screening. We're going to put it on our virtual platform, and we're going to give you a cut of the profits. All of this, you know, it was, you know, it's coming up for Christmas. It felt like Modern Films for Santa Claus to us. It was like, what a lifeline, what a lovely thing. So, Anna, can you tell us a little bit about how that started? I mean, the whole thing, you know, when did you kind of think that this is something you could do? How was that period, that first early period in lockdown? How was that for you?
Yeah, I mean, exactly as you described it, it happened so quickly, and yet so sort of, we didn't, like, we expected it, but also we didn't expect it. It was like this mix of emotions. So we had The Perfect Candidate, filmed by Khaif Al-Mansour. It was scheduled to come out in cinemas end of March. We had everything ready, marketing-wise, bookings, everything was set, and of course the world changed, and cinemas started closing. We started getting the first cancellations from Ireland, and then it just continued. So it was, yeah, we had to really switch very, very quickly. We started looking at ways to release the film online. We partnered with Curzon Home Cinema and BFI Player, but we also wanted to offer it via our own website, and hence that's basically how the new platform was born. We turned everything around in 1 week, and we basically emailed all the cinemas that were already going to play Perfect Candidate, and asked to join us in promoting the film. And as you mentioned already, we gave a modest revenue cut, and it was just the most wonderful thing to get all this support from exhibitors and just excitement during this period of sadness, and to have everyone so on board and so committed to helping us and helping this film, and how important it is for still for audiences to see this film, and just, you know, to have this was just the most wonderful thing. Yeah, that's basically how it all started.
Yeah, I mean, just so that was kind of the very, very early kind of bit, and then obviously throughout the you know, throughout all of the summer, you know, we were learning how to, you know, all about air circulation and really boring scientific things, and we were sort of like, you know, sort of grappling with like ticketing systems and how we were going to do social distancing. So that's how a lot of sort of venues were reacting. And when we opened up in in October. Although we as a venue, we were kind of supporting Welsh film. We had Eternal Beauty and we had St Maud, which did really, really well. And we didn't play. I kind of purposely didn't play Tennant. I thought by the time we'd opened into October, it was already kind of done in a way. But there was no big blockbusters to open with. Anyway, so it was really nice to sort of look at those films, and we played A Perfectly Normal Family, and we did a sort of split with that. So what we did is we played it for a short amount of time and then promoted it on the virtual player. So I know that you've got a video. We're just going to explain to the audience a little bit if you don't not aware of modern film. So if we can look at the video then of what you've been coming up with.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You ready? It's good to be back home.
Oh, I'm not sure what that was. That was interesting. That looks like a Marion Stokes project.
No, that was Molly Ivans. Ray's held the life and times of Molly Ivans. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think Marion Stokes would quite enjoy the look, that strange thing happened. Okay, so I mean, now it looks quite slick. Obviously, you've got this beautiful kind of show reel then of what modern films is doing at the moment. But obviously that first bit, I mean, you sort of you said it's we've got the platform, but that thing is what I'm really interested in, how you kind of pivoted quite quickly, because it was very, very quick into, it seemed that everybody was kind of was just losing their brains a little bit and like didn't know what they were going to do. And but modern films, did you have a platform already kind of sorted out that you wanted to use, or how did that come about?
No, not really. I mean, we wanted to offer library titles via our website, so we were thinking about it, but no, we didn't have anything. We started researching platforms that we could use for that reason, but it all really happened very quickly. It wouldn't have happened that quickly if it wasn't for this situation. But it, perhaps it would have happened down the line. But yeah, as you said, it really happened so quickly. In 1 week we had to create everything, and then the second week just contact the cinemas and make sure that we had venues on board. And so in the technical side of things, I mean, the team just worked very hard for a couple of weeks and launched it. It was I mean, that time was, I think, very depressing for everyone and very disheartening, and to have something to work on that you find like this is good purpose. This is we are able to bring our film out to audiences, and we are able to engage audiences, engage the cinemas. I think it really brought a lot of purpose in what we were working on at the moment. So it was worth it to create this. But also looking at the future, I mean, we didn't want to create this just for that film or just for a couple months. We wanted to create something that will have meaning afterwards as well, and that we would be able to have a model that works even when we go back to whatever normal that is. And that's why we continued working on it, and it grew, and it was, of course, a big part of the reason was the excitement and the engagement from cinemas, and we saw that everyone was really keen to promote more and to make it more integrated in their programming and their usual offerings. And so as we saw that more and more, we were able to grow it the way we did, and to create individual pages for cinemas, pages that they could embed on their own websites, and in that way customers don't have to leave the cinema website to come to our website, creating just a smoother experience for them. And we also, because we were able, of course, to measure how things were working, because we would collect all the data in this circumstance, we were able to see which cinemas, like for which cinemas it worked better and for which ones not so much, because it really, as I think we all know at this point, online there's so much content at the moment, and there's so many options that it's very hard to get an audience, and you really have to do double, triple work in order to get eyes on your film. So the marketing behind it, and as I said, to have it be integrated completely in your offering, I think those things were vital for this to work. Yeah. And that, of course, as you very well know, it's very difficult when you have staff going on furlough and you have limited capacity in what you can do. So yeah, we really worked very closely with exhibitors. It was really, really, really great, and tried to do as much as possible from our end to make it easier for exhibitors to promote the films as well. So yeah.
So, I mean, like, in terms of like the obviously, you know, because this was quite a swift thing internally in your team, was there any kind of like challenges with people kind of like, you know, was everybody just completely on board and like into it straight away and saw the benefit of it, or was there any sort of clashes there that you had to kind of work through? Or
no, we were all on board.
That's great. Yeah. That's great to hear. I know that it's, I mean, some distributors, that was, I think, one of the reasons why I was so kind of impressed with what Modern Films did, because it seemed so kind of like it knew its purpose immediately. Whereas some distributors, even now, are kind of still saying to me, Claire, I can assure you, we will definitely not do any kind of VOD on this. And I'm like, that's nice, but I don't feel that's a really practical way of looking at the moment. It just kind of felt like it was like I say, Modern Films just knew what it was going to do. And sort of did that, you know, really clearly, which I thought was great.
I think it's also because we were not switching. We're not trying to become a streamer. We're not trying to become a VOD platform. We were really trying to look at a model that would help all of us in the future, and you know, something new, something that we could continue working very closely with exhibitors. I mean, it's a no-brainer. We work with exhibitors constantly, and it's just to create an even better way of working is really what we were looking to find. And so when we tried this, we're like, okay, let's try it, see if it works. I mean, and being a smaller company, you're able to experiment more with things like that, and that's the beautiful thing about it. And of course, you know, Eve is really someone that experiments and wants to always look at different ways. And I think with our company, we all looked for different ways to engage audiences for specific films. Like we go based on the film, and we do different kind of release strategy, you know, depending on what the film is and what it needs. So it was a lot about that, like finding a different model. So not so much like, oh, let's just go on VOD. We see it completely different. We see it as a complement to the physical theatrical screenings, to have virtual theatrical screenings.
Absolutely. I mean, and like I say, in terms of the you know, sort of exhibition side, like it's incredibly easy. I mean, we get sent the sort of kind of the details by Modern Films, and you know, we have to send through our details, but it does feel like a real collaboration in the sense that we're working to market it locally with our audience, and we might know. I mean, it's still curated content. I mean, I will know what will work, what won't. I mean, I know that White Riot was a film that, I mean, I was really excited about playing in the cinema. I still am excited at some point we'll play it in the cinema. Sort of that lovely big sound when you've got a film about music. But I also knew that like it would have an audience in Cardiff, that we had a lot of you know, a really long-standing anti-racist groups who were kind of like, who had done that work in the past. Some brilliant people from Cardiff Bay, like Keith Murrell, who you know, has been doing that work for sort of 40 years, and this is exactly the kind of thing that was described in White Riot. and so I knew that if we worked, if we kind of presented it to them and explained that this is what the film's about, like we would in our screens, although it wasn't playing in chapter, we can kind of suggest it to them and they would play it. So it does really feel like a real collaboration in that way. I mean, I don't feel like I have to take everything. It's just that all your films are so good. That's the trouble. It kind of does feel like I can pick and choose at the moment, and that does, it still makes me feel like I'm working in programming rather than just all come one, come all. So I mean, like I say, I find that really nice. But I mean, how did how did the filmmakers find that experience? Because obviously with working in distribution, you have to deal with the expectations of filmmakers all the time, and like expecting a theatrical release. Obviously, there's the situation we're in now, but I mean, how was that first experience and how did it pan out with the rest?
I mean, look, I think with everyone right now, we all understand the situation, we understand the limitations, and everyone was excited to have their films out and for audiences to be watching them. I mean, it is a new way of releasing, but we really work very closely with the filmmakers for each of our releases, and so it was conversations and making sure that everyone is comfortable. But at the end of the day, we knew that we weren't going to be able to do what we wanted to do, to have the films, especially with Perfect Candidate being at that moment. Yeah. It was really impossible to have it play in the cinema. So it is, of course, it's not ideal, and yeah, absolutely. We all want the films to be seen on screen, like on the big screen, first and foremost. But I think it's something that we just had to do. And as the platform was also growing and as things were becoming, more worked out and more, everything was more organized, and the working relationship with exhibitors was growing, and the amount of venues that were on board changed. All of these things really showed the opportunity that is there, and so the filmmakers also could see that. They could see how they could reach audiences that perhaps they wouldn't have reached with a theatrical release. And talking to exhibitors as well, I mean, it yourself, like you want to play a film and then there's like 9 other titles that are coming out that weekend, and then you're struggling to fit this in, or you have to fit it in for 1 week, and then some audience members might not catch it. So there are all these limitations that by having something like this to complement it, it is something that you can really work on and build on for the future. So I think the filmmakers were also very happy to see that and see those opportunities. And also, we didn't only reach out to cinemas, and as you saw in the video, we also reached out to other organizations. And to do that kind of outreach and to have that opportunity to grow and like work in that way for all the releases that we did, it was really, really important. And we saw really good numbers coming from organizations, and depending on the film, sometimes it was as good as from the cinemas, and it was really not so much a surprise, but something that really positive, that hey, you know what, like this is something positive that can come out of this. Like we can really do outreach in a different way, and we can really grow the audience of the film in a completely different manner.
Yeah, because I mean, it has been interesting how sort of the availability of talent. Usually it's like, I mean, I'm in Cardiff. It's usually very difficult to get people to come to Cardiff unless the films were made here. So to have Q&As and things like that have been just recorded on Zoom because people have got time, and like you say, they're more involved with, like, we understand that this is how we have to promote this film this time. And so that has been, for exhibition, has been really, really great. I mean, and again, just doing kind of general social media things, there just seems to be more assets, more things that we can use, which is really helpful. Great. Okay. Well, I'm just going to bring in Nia now. I mean, now, so just to explain a bit my relationship with Abertoir. Abertoir is a sort of this, if you haven't been to Aberystwyth before, please go to Aberystwyth, because it's like one of the best towns in the whole of the world. But so Aberystwyth Arts Centre is kind of like, at the top of a hill overlooking the sea, and you've got sort of these country lanes. You go to Abertoir Horror Festival, and you have to walk down the back lanes at night in the dead at 1 o'clock in the morning, and it's very scary. So it kind of, for me, like being in Abertoir, it feels like a real, I mean, it's one of the friendliest festivals I've ever been to as well. It's a real family atmosphere. It's really lovely. And so it's the experience of it being in person is really important to me. And obviously we couldn't have it this year. So, but I mean, I was really impressed with how Abertoir did this year, and how the experience of Abertoir was really, really still really lovely. So can you talk a little bit through how that was for you, especially the early days when you were like, oh God, what's going to happen? And when do we decide what happens with, with this festival?
Yeah, definitely. It's a bit of a strange one because both, so we're quite a small team. There's 3 of us who are like the core staff, and 2 of us work at Aberystwyth Arts Centre, which is where our venue. So, in March we shut, and we were like, okay. And in the same, much the same way, it was like, okay, how long is this going to last? What's going on, But I think fairly early on, I mean, personally anyway, I kind of felt like, I think this is going to last a bit longer than we think. I never had an inkling of obviously how we'd still be doing this right now, but it took a little bit of time. It wasn't until June that we actually announced, we're going online, everybody. But we'd been talking about it for a while, and I think the thing that sort of made the decision, not for us, but the thing that sort of cinched it for us as a team, was that we wanted, because we are a small team, and because it takes so much work to put on, we wanted to decide early enough that we could focus our energy on whatever choice we made. We didn't want to be planning for 2 eventualities and then just picking one. We thought we need to make the best kind of choice, or the choice we think will be the best one, but that either way will mean that we can put on a good event, even if everything is open again and everything. And we actually are very fortunate and unfortunate that our venue also suffered flood damage, and we wouldn't have been able to do the festival anyway.
Yeah.
So we kind of had this moment of going, okay, it's not quite a silver lining, but at least some kind of cosmic sign that we'd taken that right decision early on. So it was a little bit of a strange situation to be in. So it was a steep learning curve for us, really.
So, I mean, how did you decide on your platform? Was that a fairly quick decision, and all the different events you were going to do?
It was quick-ish in that it was completely new to us. We had no intention prior to all this emerging that we would ever do something like this online. But there were sort of 2 or 3 platforms we had to choose from, and it was so we used Eventive, was our streaming platform, and it became quite quickly apparent that just suited our needs and our budget the most. So the decision was relatively easy in that sense. But we were very keen on it not just being a sort of similar kind of thinking, I suppose, in it not just being a at-home VOD kind of experience. We wanted to ensure that it was in some capacity a festival experience. And from speaking to other festivals, I know a lot of festival programmers, and I completely sympathize and don't disagree, who had this thought of like, well, we don't want to do online because that's not a festival. That's not what it's about. And I totally get that. But we were really keen to do something, whether that ended up feeling like a festival or not. And we sort of turned to things like Zoom to host sort of social spaces, to host our Q&As and things like that, to try and maintain that sort of sense of community that you've sort of touched on that you get from Abertoir, because we did a little audience survey as well, and that sort of festival atmosphere and liveness was something that was apparent as being quite important to our audience. So we tried, I think, more successfully than we ever thought we were actually going to do, to pull that off, because from feedback we've had from people, it seems to have worked. But it was mostly, so Eventive and Zoom was basically what we're using. We had a little bit of content on Vimeo as well, because we normally during almost at the real festival, in a normal regular festival, we have things like our little daily not newspapers, but our little daily flyers with little updates. So we did video updates instead. And we did still send a physical mailing to everyone. So we still had a printed brochure because we wanted, again, just that sort of little piece of Abertoir in everybody's home in a physical way. And it was just a program and some postcards in a bag. So it wasn't like a huge goodie bag or anything. But again, that seemed to really go down really well. So yeah.
Right, I think you've got a PowerPoint, so we can show off a little bit of the festival. So yeah, if we can see the PowerPoint, that'd be great.
It's all a bit illustrative, really, but I've got pictures of what we're normally like at our festival. So you can see we're quite a small cinema normally. So we've got an auditorium full of people, one of our off-site screenings, one of our lovely audience members dressed up with a xenomorph coming out of their chest, and a theatre foyer full of people doing our pub quiz. So something that's quite important to Abertoir is that although we are a film festival, it's not just films that we do. We like to make the most of the fact that we are based usually in a multi-arts venue, you know. And so we do have theatre, music, talks, presentations, so on. And that's, you know, we're always huddled nicely at the end with the last people standing for our usual like end of festival photo, which I'm sure is now like just the most distressing thing to look at, thinking of standing that close to anyone anymore, but there we go. So it was this sort of sense of community that we wanted to kind of recapture online. That was the festival team going, sorry everybody, we're online this year. And Gaz Bailey's cat, Mai in the background, yes, who became star of the festival this year.
Yes, I've had lots of meetings with Gaz, and his cat is always featuring. It's just cat very, very much likes that spot, I think.
We were insistent that she had to appear in the background of basically every video update we did. So this is, for example, so this is our poster for this year. We normally take place sort of mid-November, but we ended up on the Halloween weekend because we were accounting for other festivals which had moved around a bit. So we didn't, there were so many. Pretty much every week from the start of October to mid-November, there was a horror festival meant to be happening. So we sort of accounted for that. So we went for this orange, black, red, white theme. And we have the same local poster artist who does our artwork every year. And we said, make it reflect, because normally it's themed after the films we're showing or a classics sort of strand and stuff. And this year we were just like, we have this female character on our poster every year. We just said, she's at home, she's watching a film, just do something for us. And he came up with this brilliant creation, which I still think might be my favorite poster.
Yeah, I've got lots of the Abertoir posters, and I think this is my favorite. I've got a t-shirt of this as well. Yeah. So yeah, I'm pleased with that.
And then things like we did an Abertoir checklist for people because it's so new to everyone, something that was really important to us because we were all learning as we went. And something that was really, really important to us that we weren't leaving any of our audience behind, because we've got quite a sort of mix of people in our regular audience, and we know them. It's quite a loyal audience, so we know them quite well, you know. And we wanted to make sure that we were not to be patronizing and not like hand holding them or anything, but we wanted to make sure that we were being as clear and like instructive to people as we could be, but trying to make it fun as well and not just, you know, dry FAQs and things like that. And we did things like we started a Discord channel, which is sort of like, if people don't know Discord, it's like I suppose it's like a cross between a message board and a messaging app. And we'd seen Fantasia Festival in Canada do that. And we thought, we'll give it a go. We don't know how well it's going to do. And actually, people got so into it. It wasn't the whole audience on there. It was a portion of it. But people were really enjoying that sort of social space, even though it was entirely on your phone, you know.
And as a reminder, I know lots of people have been using the chat function on this way up. And I can see some of that happening as we speak as well. Yeah. So,
yeah, definitely. And it was just... always trying to think of what our audience usually gets from Abertoir and how we can try and replicate that online as much as we can. And then this was this year's equivalent of our end of festival picture. So it's not quite the same, but it was still, it was just, people were so generous with what they were telling us at the end of it, because it was a very stressful experience, though actually less stressful than a usual year, I've got to say, or less tiring than a usual year. And people were so generous with how sort of just enthusiastic, and it's one of those things that I'm still really grateful that people sort of came with us. And it was just a brilliant experience to kind of, when we started out the planning, like you're saying, you know, like in June when we decided, we were so sort of thinking, oh, is this the right decision? What are we doing? You know, all this kind of stuff. And it thankfully it kind of worked, I suppose.
Yeah. And with in terms of thinking the audience, and actually we've had a question about this, so I'm glad that everybody else is interested as me. So with the audience, in terms of the data of the audience, how did you find it different to other years?
Well, we've not had a deep dive into our sort of audience data yet, but it was certainly a bigger audience, which we were always hoping for, because I sort of touched on earlier, our cinema auditorium is relatively small. It's 112 seats. And we definitely had a bigger audience than we ever could have fit in our cinema. So you kind of go, well, there you go, you know, which is really exciting. And we particularly did a sort of ticketing system that we offered. You could buy a pass, a couple's pass, or a mates rates pass, which we didn't enforce in any way. We were saying, you know, we're not going to come around your house and check if there's 5 of you watching, obviously. But the number of people who actually did just honestly buy, you know, mates or a couple's pass was brilliant. So it was that kind of way of supporting the festival in one level in a financial sense, but that also sort of allowed us to have a better idea of how many people were watching. So if a mate's pass had been bought, we kind of presumed there's 3 people watching, even though it might have been more. So once we actually really do our maths, which we haven't done yet, it's going to be interesting to see actually the extent of the presumed audience that was there, but it was definitely bigger. We were sort of reaching a lot of people, I think, who had said, oh, you know, we've always wanted to come, but we've never really been able to take the time off, or wanted to take 6 days off because we're a 6-day festival, or we haven't been able to travel to Aberystwyth because, as everyone knows, Aberystwyth is hard to get to. So it was giving people a chance to try it out. And we did have feedback from people kind of going, wow, you know, we're so glad we took the chance on a digital festival pass, because now we know the type of thing it is, the type of vibe it is, which was amazing to hear, because we thought, oh, okay, so you did get some sort of vibe from our online version. And then it's people wanting to come to the again, the physical festival again.
So you've actually been able to do quite a lot of audience development with this project, which is obviously, we know it would be like, isn't it great? But we can do it. But it is, I mean, audience development has been incredibly important. And Anna, I mean, how did that affect with you know, sort of your approach? So I mean, did you have a lot of metadata and things like that you've been working with? How, because obviously, you know, Nia's festival only really just taken place. Whereas obviously you've had a few months of audience data about this. What have you found?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it was an interesting sort of experiment, because we could now sort of analyze when people are buying the film, like when are they buying their virtual ticket, which day, what times. And so it really allowed us a bit of a more like closer connection to the audience that we didn't have before. But at the same time, it's the most interesting part about it was how many more people can we reach? Like that was sort of what we were most focusing on, because it's not, if you look at the numbers you do, the box office numbers that the films would have done in cinemas, and the numbers that they do on platforms, I mean, there's no comparison. We all want to have the films in the cinemas, but it is more of that audience development that is really the key thing. And it feels like this should be the conversation right now, because everyone is concentrating a lot, and naturally, of course, I mean, venues are closed and everyone is struggling. So concentrating on how to bring back audiences, but the developing audiences is perhaps something that is put a bit on the side, and that it's really, really important not to forget that we still want to reach more and more people. And is this perhaps an opportunity to reach younger audiences? Is this perhaps an opportunity to include audiences that were not included before? People that couldn't come to the cinema, and now they're able to watch from home. So there is a lot of work that can be done there. And for us, that was the most interesting thing. And looking at the data that we had, it was not so much, oh, let's compare it, but it was more like, oh, look at how much more we could do that way. And also it really sort of built throughout, and it was very interesting to see how certain films, and actually most films, how online they really need their time to grow, to get their audience. So it's not the same as, release weekend, everyone is out in cinema, everyone's hearing about it, they go, they watch it, then the word of mouth works, but it in a different way. Online, we saw, for example, one of our films that we released now in October, Beyond the Visible, documentary about Hilma af Klint, and the audiences kept coming throughout the month, and we were surprised to see that. But also, we had put a lot of effort in creating events with different art organizations, and so it really paid off. And it was that was the most interesting part for us, to see that growth and to see that different approach and how it helps certain films, but actually all films, but certain films even more, because they might not have gotten that audience. I
think it's a really important point, because I mean, like, certainly, I mean, we're, the opening weekend, it seems that the sort of film industry is so skewed in that way, but that only really works for us, for the sort of blockbuster industry, really, for the major studios. And obviously, we can understand, because that's huge, percentage wise, a huge part of the industry. But I mean, for venues such as ours, with sort of smaller independent venues, where it is usually the second week, we usually see a kind of like rise in visitor numbers, or and for the cinema, like, as a film is ending, because everybody wants to catch it before it finishes. And so for us to be able to use sort of modern films as kind of almost like a third screen, be like, okay, it's finished playing theatrically, we can keep watching it here, is really, really key. And it's certainly something that I'm really, really keen on keeping. I mean, with Patrick, which was sort of the Anti-Worlds release, we played it theatrically. I think we were the only venue in the UK to play it. So it strangely got us quite a lot of press for it. But then, like, audiences are finding it again, because they're like, oh, but I heard about this film, but it was like, I kept on forgetting to go and see it. And then I went to see it. And obviously with your films, it's a similar situation, where we can kind of talk about it, but then they get to see it. So I'm pleased to hear that you think it's something that you want to keep in the future. What about you, Nia? How do you see in terms of the festival? Do you think it's something that you'll want to keep going in some way?
In some capacity, I feel like the feedback we've had from people who really appreciated having an opportunity to essentially attend the festival without having to physically attend somewhere. It's I almost feel like we'd be remiss not to have some sort of online function next year if we get back to normal, right? I don't think we could ever do a full hybrid situation where we were doing both a physical and an online sort of equivalent to each other, especially because our physical event, a lot of it is down to, we decorate the cinema, and a lot of it is kind of in the little silly bits that we do, which people really love, actually. And that takes a lot of work, and we'd never be able to do the both at the same time. But I think it's something we've very lightly sort of touched on as a team so far. But I definitely think that there is a strong likelihood that we'll have something, even if it's, one film and Q&A as part of the festival that's online or something like that. It's just that something that can mean that there are people who are able to be part of the festival, even if it's not the full physical festival. which is something I don't think we'd ever have thought we'd be saying when we were starting out on this sort of journey. I don't think we'd have ever dreamed of even thinking about that. But yeah, I think it's been an interesting process to get to that point.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was interesting hearing sort of Ben talk about being nimble financially. I mean, we have to see what that actually means. But also what you've both sort of said about the audience experience. About, I think it's interesting how we've not really talked about income very much, because again, it's this understanding that actually nobody's making an awful lot of income at the moment. It is more about audience engagement. It is more, that is the kind of, the audience development is the more important part of this project. Obviously the income is a major concern, and we're going to have to sort of look at that in the future. But whilst there are other options, I think it's really important to stay kind of positive and try for our audience, you know, and ourselves of course, but our audience mainly, because I think it's one of these situations where, you know, nobody knows quite what's happening at the moment. We kind of need to make the best of what we've got, and I'm really, I'm, you know, just say again, I'm really impressed with how you've both kind of like moved things forward for our industry, both, you know, in both ways. I think you've been, you know, both, you know, Abertoir, what you've been doing with festivals, all of that is really important to see, because I think that shows what festivals can do. And there's other lovely festivals like Math have been doing, you know, did some wonderful social stuff as well. And what Modern's doing, I think, is going to be increasingly important, I think, in terms of what we're doing as an exhibition. So yeah, so thank you very much. Now, I'm sure that This Way Up team are keen to have their platform back. Because but it's been a lovely talking to you both. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you.